Okay, 25 points on the Nifty, 10,912. So it's looking a little better as compared to what it was in the initial 2 hours or so of trade. Things started quite okay. Then the sentiment soured. Across Asia, markets were in the red. And the Nifty here slipped into the red as well. And there is a bit of a pullback, which is already underway. Nothing really notable in that sense or large enough to change the direction per se. It looks range bound. And we'll get you some perspective on the charts, etc. with Ashwini, as always, in just a bit. But as always, let's take stock of what's happening in Europe. Right at the word go. With me is my colleague Sumaira. Hi, Sumaira.
Hi, Prashant. Good afternoon to you as well. And Europe has actually seen a lot of action overnight. So that historic Brexit vote has actually been defeated. It's a big setback actually for the UK Prime Minister Theresa May. She faces a no-confidence vote tomorrow. So I suppose, investors in Europe would be just a tad bit jittery, but this would remain one of the big cues, of course, to watch out for. But nevertheless, for now, at least the French market opening with the tick of about 0.5% higher. But all right, FTSE is also open now, so about 0.25% higher over there. I think it was pretty much known. It's just that the margin of defeat was perhaps larger than what people had expected. First up, here are our top stories. Market is off the day's low, led by strength in ICICI Bank, Reliant and Infosys. Mid-cap index is in line.
Etihad wants to invest additional equity in Jet Airways, but at a share price of 150 rupees each. Wants a pricing exemption from the SEBI formula. That's a cnbc TV. An exclusive. The Jet stock, of course, is lower on this information.
A lot of stocks on the move. The Z Entertainment stock succumbs to profit-taking despite a strong earnings performance. KPIT Tech in the green despite a top-down miss, while Specialty Restaurant is in upper circuit now, posts stellar numbers.
Former Deputy Chairman of the Planning Commission, Montek Singh Ahluwalia, bats for the coalition government format, adds that targeted income for the poor is not a bad idea.
Well, in the management of Syndicate Bank tell CNBC TV 18 that 14 to 16% of their NPAs are from the exposure to Mudra loans. Union Bank says their exposure stands at 7%. Okay,
Ashwini is with us. Ashwini, thanks very much. As always, so the dip or maybe the market from the day's low has come up about what, 35, 40 odd points. And what's your reading? What else is moving and what's your sense?
See, I think today you have a narrow range where, open and close are likely to be fairly close by. And often this sort of action happens after a large range day when, some people decide to take profits, others come in. But we haven't really given up a whole lot of gain. And that is the positive of today. Now, basically, market sharp movement is likely tomorrow because you have big results, etc. So, but the good thing is that the bears have not gotten traction from, the key 10,950 zone. Now, one thing that you mentioned about Jet, if Jet is losing out, who's winning? I think Indigo. And that way, I think this is a stock that people should trade on the upside, maybe through options, etc., because things will take time in working out. But my sense is it could easily go up 8-10% while Jet, solves its problems. So the idea is to buy here at about 1120 and look for targets of about 1155. NIT Tech is a buy with a stop of 1200, target of 1245. And IndusInd Bank, that is a buy with a stop of 1510, target of 1560.
Fair enough. Would you want to do anything in the bank Nifty? You have a trade on, Ashwini?
See, we have a trade on the Nifty because this time around Nifty is outperforming because IT, Reliance, everything is participating. But I would think even buying the bank Nifty may not be such a bad idea. It may underperform a bit. So you can buy this with a stop of about 27,400 and look for targets about 28,000.
Any thoughts on IDFC Bank? It's moving a bit.
See, IDFC basically has just started to move. Possibly they're now getting some traction. So my sense is that we could look at, if we get past this zone of 50, you are looking at maybe 65 to 67. This one is just gaining momentum, so this could outperform even the bank nifty.
What about these HEG, graphite, etc.? I mean, graphite is up 8, HEG is up 5.
See, basically, you know, the best of the run is maybe done. Now, you know, it's basically something like Eicher Motor, where you buy at lows around 3,500 and kind of get out at 47, 4,800. So likely to move sideways from here, just that they are bouncing back from their 200-day moving averages.
All right, Ashwini, thanks much for joining in. Let's focus on the global setup. UK's Prime Minister Theresa May's Brexit withdrawal deal with Europe has been rejected overwhelmingly by the Parliament. May lost by 230 votes after lawmakers voted by 432 to 202 to reject the deal. Politicians from different political parties have rejected the proposed withdrawal agreement, and this is reportedly the largest defeat for a sitting government in UK's political history. Meanwhile, the opposition Labour Party has tabled a no-confidence motion which will be debated on Wednesday. Nick Parsons, Head of Research and Strategy at Thomas Lloyd, joins us on the telephone line. Hi, Nick. Good afternoon. Good morning to you, rather. You know, the markets have pretty much taken this one in their stride. Equity, currency, both remain pretty unaffected. But what happens from here?
Well, good morning from London. I think what happens from here is a very difficult fog to penetrate. I think we can say with some degree of certainty that the prospects for a no-deal Brexit appear to have diminished. That's to say that there doesn't seem to be a majority support from all sides of the House in favour of that. And it's for that reason that the pound has rallied overnight. But whilst yesterday's vote told us what people didn't want, it doesn't tell us what they do want. And it's very unlikely that if the Prime Minister continues with her obdurate negotiating stance, that we're going to make any significant progress. I think the likelihood is that we actually have an extension or indeed a revocation of Article 50. An extension could still leave Prime Minister Theresa May as Prime Minister, but a revocation, abandoning the whole process, would surely lead to her resignation. So I think we've got continued uncertainty in UK politics and indeed overshadowing UK markets.
Nick, hi. So the confidence vote, I mean, the government should win, and then the focus will shift to what happens after that, as you said. But it does seem like Prime Minister May is in some ways kind of wedded to some version of her deal. I mean, does it seem that way?
Yes, it's absolutely the case. There was very little indication, either in her statement to the House of Commons yesterday evening or in subsequent comments from 10 Downing Street, that there was any significant change of plan. It does seem that the red lines that she had previously that could not be crossed, those relating to free movement of labour and immigration, and no membership of the EU customs union, those red lines still appear to be in place. And unless there's some softening of those, unless the red becomes the pink and then becomes the grey, as it were, then it's very difficult to see that this consultation that she has asked for on dialogue is actually going to get us anywhere. And the fact is that under current legislation, it's on the statute book, that in 10 weeks' time the UK will exit the European Union without a deal. So it seems very much as though the next phase of this drama is for a bill to be brought, an amendment to be brought to the House of Commons next week, calling for an extension of the Article 50 period. In all likelihood, that will be for a period either of 3 months to take us to the end of June or until December the 31st. So I'm afraid it's a little like Groundhog Day when we look at UK politics at the moment.
Right. Is it possible that we get a second referendum, Nick?
Yes, it is possible, and I think the odds of that are growing. Were it indeed to be the only way out of this mess, then it would appear from all current polling that there would be a vote to remain within the European Union. And were that to be the case, then you could see potentially a substantial rally in sterling from here. But of course, the impact on UK equity markets will be much less clear because a rallying pound would reduce the value of overseas income once it's stated in sterling. So even though I think the currency would rally in the event of a second referendum, it's far from clear that the equity market would be quite so enthusiastic.
Mm-hmm. Nick, just one last word on sentiment for markets, equity markets and otherwise at this point. China is lots of announcements almost every day. I mean, today we got at least 3 or 4 announcements for further stimulus and all kinds of things aimed at different sectors from different quarters of the Chinese government. Data remains a little weakish, both in the US. We got some data out of Japan, Australia, again, slightly weakish. But again, Fed commentary has been quite dovish. Where does it leave us?
Well, in terms of sentiment more broadly, I think the key indicator is the price of the S&P 500. There was a lot of technical resistance around 2,600 on that index, and I thought it was very interesting to see the ease with which that was broken on the upside yesterday. And in trading thus far this morning, we're up another 10 points to 26.15. So I would suggest that global sentiment more broadly is most definitely favorable, and it's against that backdrop that global asset allocation decisions have to be made. But I would suggest that the clear winner in this is likely to be the emerging markets universe more broadly, and specifically those countries where we've seen already decisive policy action and where currencies have been stable to rising over the course of the last 3 months. So I still believe that we're going to see outperformance of emerging markets relative to developed markets.
All right, Nick, thanks very much. Appreciate you joining
You're
in and speaking with us. And remember, the vote in the UK is going to be later. It's going to be essentially midnight our time, and the markets around the world will react to it. I mean, at least in this part of the world, will react tomorrow morning to it. US markets may get a chance to react to it one way or the other. Because they'll be trading. 13 points on the Nifty, so there is some give back and selling which has come through. 10,899 is where we are at. We take another very quick break here. Mindtree numbers today for the third quarter. We get you quick expectations on the other side. Stay with us.